Good morning, everybody. I think we'll get started because we're going to have an incredible talk today, and I don't want anybody to miss any of it. I'm Emily Kroll. I'm the director of the TCNJ Art Gallery, and it is an honor for me to introduce today's speaker, Jerome Silbergeld. Before I tell you a little bit about him and his many, many accomplishments, I do want to remind everybody that the lecture today is being given in conjunction with our next exhibition in the Art Gallery, which is entitled Intermediate Selected Contemporary Chinese American Art. And the exhibition opens next Wednesday afternoon. And prior to the opening, there will be an artist roundtable discussion with all 8 of the artists in the exhibition participating in the roundtable. And it'll be moderated by Professor Jian Mi from TCNJ, and Professor Mi is also the guest curator for the exhibition. Today we are going to learn about contemporary Chinese art from Dr. Jerome Silbergeld, who is the P.Y. and Kin-Mei W. Tang Professor of Chinese Art History at Princeton University. He's also the director of the Tang Center for East Asian Art at Princeton. He is an affiliate professor in the East Asian Studies Department and a member of the Film Studies Faculty Committee. Professor Silbergeld's expertise in Chinese art ranges from traditional Chinese painting, architecture, and gardens to the most current Chinese art, cinema, and photography. He has published more than 50 books, articles, and book chapters, including the Encyclopedia Britannica's entry on Chinese art. Among his recent publications are Hitchcock with a Chinese Face from 2004, Body in Question, Image and Illusion in 2 Chinese Films by director Zhang Wen from 2008, and in 2009, Outside In, Contemporary times Chinese times American Art. And Outside In was published in conjunction with a very important and influential exhibition of contemporary Chinese art with the same name, which Professor Silbergeld curated at the Princeton University Art Museum. We are very fortunate to have Professor Silbergeld here today as he discusses how Chinese art came to America, got hip, and became famous, the short history of an art movement with some unanswered questions. Please welcome Professor Silbergeld.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much, Emily Kroll and Mi Jiayan, and all of you for coming. And it's always best to be talking with the student audience. One doesn't have to talk down to students. So I will challenge you somewhat with this talk, and if time remains, we can have some questions afterwards. Every exhibition, every set of paintings hanging on museum walls is there as the result of some curatorial strategy. Curatorial strategy doesn't occur in isolation, but it develops in an environment of curatorial dialogue and scholarly debate. Surely curators aim to please and to educate, but they often have something else on their mind as well, which is the working out of a professional perspective that remains at least partly hidden from public view. Some curators educate in a museum. Other curators pursue financial profit privately as dealers. Over the past 18 or 20 years, a series of exhibitions and catalogs have introduced American audiences to the new Chinese art, beginning with 2 major shows, first in 1993, which I foolishly turned down the chance to curate, and then in 1998, which provided the real public breakthrough exhibition, which I helped to organize in its Seattle showing. And they have done this with such success that young and once obscure art, obscure not only in America but in China as well, now accounts for an estimated 20% of all contemporary art profits made at auction worldwide. And that percentage is rising rapidly. But within this trendy realm of modern Chinese art, another distinctive new trend can be observed among exhibitions recently held. These exhibitions include one which opened in August 2006 at Harvard's Sackler Museum very focused exhibition with only 6 paintings by 5 artists, widely diverse in styles. One at the Seattle Asian Art Museum with the symposium in June of 2007, exhibiting the private collection of Oxford professor, former Stanford professor, Michael Sullivan, who among academicians is considered the dean of 20th century painting studies, and who owns the first collection of modern Chinese painting assembled anywhere in the West. An exhibition which opened a month later in Connecticut at the New Britain Museum of American Art, note that name, American Art. A second exhibition which opened at Harvard in autumn 2007, and my own exhibition at Princeton University Art Museum, Outside In. Each of these exhibitions has had its own agenda, but collectively they have tended to depart from recent exhibition history and to challenge the dominant curatorial practice of recent years in this area, which has patronized the Chinese avant-garde and the dissident modes of Chinese political pop to the exclusion of all else. The intentional nature of these curatorial departures and the seriousness of their intent are seen in the symposia or scholarly lecture series arranged for each of these exhibitions. In one way or another, I was involved with all 7 of the exhibitions illustrated here, and today I want to offer a view of the emerging phenomenon represented by these exhibitions. When I first proposed the Princeton exhibition more than 5 years ago, I thought of it as a unique departure. But all of the other exhibitions took place before mine finally opened, and each one came about quite independently of the others. So rather than some kind of a conspiracy, I think there's been something like a minor contagion going around, something germinating in the cultural atmosphere. And your exhibition here at TCNJ shares in and extends that departure from the norm. In general, most of the contemporary art exhibitions over the past 15 years have paid close attention to the new geographical order of things in a period of rapid globalization, at a time when people in information and art spill beyond the old political and cultural borders. Given what is happening to China in this time of rapid globalization, everyone is asking, what do we mean these days by that adjective Chinese? And what is left of what we could once readily identify as Chinese visuality? We live in an era when geopolitics goes hyphenated and is being trumped by the instantaneous flow of goods and cultural exchange via a market that spans the oceans and an audience that is increasingly popularized. And even if a few people like myself manage to find some intellectual comfort with the growth of cultural confusion, we all have to consider the question, has the concept of Chineseness become too geographically specific to be useful, even when abridged by a whole slew of hyphens like Chinese American and other kinds of cautionary qualifiers? In fact, many Chinese American artists are asking the same question through their art, both seriously and sometimes humorously, like 2 New York artists who were both in my exhibition, and one at the College of New Jersey exhibition, soon to open. Zhang Hongtu, who decants the oils of Italian Renaissance and French Impressionism in traditional Chinese bottles, and also the artist Sui Fei, whose beautiful calligraphy is not legible and composed not of traditional brushstrokes, but of grape tendrils, or in a recent work, of metal speaker wires. And not only is Chineseness being interrogated, we are obliged by American artists to reconsider as well what is meant by American in American art. Is Chineseness just too old-fashioned and too politically incorrect to be a useful concept any longer? It is getting harder and harder to say what we mean by Chinese or by American without adding various other parameters that radically qualify not only geography, but also transgress ethnicity and allow for cultural affinity and personal choice. No single definition of Chinese will do any longer, And today you don't have to use traditional Chinese materials or produce Chinese subject matter or be born in China or even be of Chinese ethnicity to be a Chinese artist. If you want to be Chinese, if you want to be a Chinese artist, you can be. It can be negotiated.